essentially, digital humanities means that I use computers to look at books, but not just one or two books, but a whole bunch of books at the same time. I'm currently working on a project on William Faulkner, who, as it happened, wrote a lot of books. They even gave him a medal because they thought it was so good. Roughly speaking, or briefly speaking, he writes about a place called Yoknapatawpha, which is the fictionalization of his hometown of Oxford, Mississippi, spanning 14 novels and dozens of short stories. Faulkner tells this saga of his town of 100 different interconnected characters, all from different social circumstances. And this paints a very rich portrait of the American South, stretching from roughly 1830 to 1960. He's a writer for all seasons, so to speak. In fact, he's liked a lot. He's the most written about 20th century American author. And that leads to this very large critical corpus on him. And he's also taught in universities and high schools across the world. He also made maps, which is nice, because it helps us locate where the things are happening in his fiction. So the confluence of this very critically acclaimed author, him being taught, and maps made for a digital project out of the University of Virginia, and that's why they invited me, just to keep the Thomas Jefferson theme going for the day. So what we've done is we're creating a searchable database of all of his fiction that locates all of his characters, locations, and events, and is able to put them on a digital map. Right now, we've taken 14 novels, 54 short stories, with roughly 6,000 pages worth of data. We've turned that into 4,000 characters, 2,000 locations, and 6,000 events. And when you have all that data, what you can do is you get a map like this, and you can plot out the locations, you can plot out the characters, and you can play the events with the little doohickey at the bottom. That's a technical term. And you can also drill down into the characters, locations, and events. And since we can connect to other databases, we can show archival data related to that story, and we can pull up anything that Faulkner may have said in a public setting about that work. Now, what I work on is I do advanced visualizations of this. So rather than looking at just one story, I kind of flip this on its side, stack on all the stories, smash them together, flip them back up, and I can show the distribution of all of the characters across time and space in Faulkner. I can then look at attributes and look at racial segregation of his county, and you can see that all the blue, that's all the white people, they're all in the center of town, and all the people who are not white are sort of on the edge of town. I can add a time variable to that and show how that distribution occurs over time. And you can see that it's initially non-white people who are there, and then it gets settled by white people, as white people tend to settle where non-white people are. It's kind of their thing. So I can also look at another way, instead of from the top, just drill down into it and think of, well, how often does it happen that people of a different race or a different gender might occur in the same space? I can tell you that in the 6,000 events that we've documented, it happens exactly 7 times that a white male is with a black female, and then the black male is with a white female. And that speaks to the immense racial and gender anxiety going on in this community. Now, all of these fancy pictures are fun, but it took 30 scholars, 5 years, and $400,000 to get all this data. It's very time intensive to do this, and the problem is that garbage data leads to garbage results. And in fact, I wanted to teach a course called How to Not Make Garbage, but I didn't want to get a look from the administration, so now I teach a course called Thick Mapping and Fuzzy Geodata, which is essentially the same thing. And we ask the question, where is here? And we try to answer that question by looking at literature, history, and narrative more broadly conceived, and then we spatialize that narrative, and then we narrativize that space. Thank you.